So hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is the fifth and last webinar in our Serving on Groups That Make Decisions webinar series for this fall. My name is Jan Sarek, and I'm the founder and former, now retired, executive director and CEO of Wisconsin Facets. I'm also now the director of Sarek Consulting Services, where I work with nonprofit agencies. I provide training for boards of directors and training for others, like for all of you today, and then also interim agency management and other services. So I'm a parent of two adult sons, one of whom has autism. That's how I kind of got started with all of this lot of fun stuff to begin with. So here's the agenda for today. I'm going to do a quick overview of the Serving on Groups guidebook resource. There's 8 sections in the guidebook, and today we're going to cover the last 2 sections, 7 and 8, and I will end with some additional resources for you for each of those sections. Your handouts today include the PowerPoint slides for today if you want to follow along, and then the complete section 7 and 8 from the guidebook and a couple of more handouts. First, like I've done in the other webinars in this series, I just want to quick launch a poll to just kind of assess where you are all at on having served on decision-making groups. So either you never served one, you've served on one, you're thinking about joining one, you're serving on one or more now. And if you're serving on one or more now, if you write the name in either the question box or the chat box, I will watch for that. All right, I'll give you a couple minutes here, seconds I should say. Okay, it looks like almost everybody voted. So I'm going to, or made your comments, so I'm going to share that out with you. And it looks like all of you actually that are on this, oops, how did I get off here? Okay, well, I hope you can hear me because it says I'm off the air now. So, okay, so anyways, 100% of you have served on a decision-making group before. So let's go on, and I'm just going to quick tell you, for those of you who weren't on the previous webinars, just to let you know, I want to briefly tell you about serving on groups. This was developed in response to an identified need, and Wisconsin Facets found that it wasn't just enough just to invite parents to join decision-making groups, but that sometimes they may need empowerment or some, additional information and support in order to be the most effective participants that they can be. The information in this webinar and serving on groups is really intended to support anyone on those groups, not just parents. And it applies to all kinds of decision-making groups, not just ones related to education or special education. Wisconsin Facets developed the Serving on Groups guidebook with funding from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction and the U.S. Department of Education. You're going to hear me refer to the resource as the guidebook for short, and the research and review of this guidebook was the result of the work with a really large group of stakeholders across Wisconsin that included parents and educators and state agencies and a bunch of other people. So there's something for everybody in the guidebook, and it's a great introduction for some. It's a welcome refresher for others, and it's a good resource for all, including experts and mentors, so that everybody can come to the table ready to serve. So the guidebook and many other related resources, you can download it for free on the online learning platform on the website. The link is on the screen. And I just want to give a big promotion to the online learning platform. It's right in there. You can see where it says modules. If you go on that, you can really get the whole module access 24/7. And then you can also order the hard copy guidebook from the website. So let's get started with section 7, the role of families on groups. And one of your handouts is the complete section 7, as I said before. A particular emphasis today is going to be on the family representative role and ways to make sure that all voices are heard and represented. the parent representative. Often families aren't asked to serve on a decision-making group just to represent themselves and their family. The reason that they're often asked to join a decision-making group is really to give the perspective of not only themselves, but other families in a similar situation. So, and that's not necessarily something that most parents are familiar doing. So how do we learn those skills, and how do we turn our family story into a tool to make changes that we're looking for? And how can somebody serving as the family representative role make sure that all voices are heard and represented? I want to mention that the title of this section is the role of families on groups. So I'm going to you're going to hear me say family representative, but please know that this information can really apply to anybody who's representing the values and opinions of others more than just their own opinion when they serve on a representative on a group. So, for example, if you're an educator and you're asked to get on a group to represent the voices of other educators, such as on a school advisory council or something like that, this information really could be pretty important to you as well. So it's important to understand that the group in which we're serving or that we're being asked to serve or being asked to join, each group is unique in their mission and their leadership style, priorities, and goals that the group is working towards. How the group is structured, like if it uses formal or informal processes, and how they make decisions, like do they go by majority vote or do they use consensus? Your time is valuable, so choose your opportunity to serve on a decision-making group wisely, and because you want to really find an opportunity that's meaningful to you. So to make sure that your time is productive, consider a few points before you agree to serve on a decision-making group. So you can review the group's mission statement, the purpose, and the history to see if the group is working on issues that are important to you. Find out the reason the group was created in the first place. Is the group formal or informal? Is there a president, a vice president, or a secretary or treasurer? Is there no designated leader? Just find out, who organizes the meetings. And then find out the group's expectations for and kind of the description of member roles. Are there attendance requirements? Are there dues or donation or fundraising requirements? Do you have the time necessary, to commit to this group, in order to meet their expectations? You could ask about if you're required to serve on additional committees besides just the group as a whole meeting. Ask if meeting notes from past meetings are available for you to look at. This would help you understand what the group has been doing most recently, what they've accomplished, what they've done in the past. These meeting minutes record what the group has talked about and also identifies any decisions that were made fairly recently. Ask to visit a group's meeting before you officially commit to join. And this might help you see, the group dynamics and how you might think you fit into those dynamics. You could interview somebody that's currently serving on the group. So I just want to give you an example. When I mentioned checking out donation and fundraising responsibilities, oftentimes when you get on a board for a nonprofit association, for example, which they're always in need of board members, really and truly. So, but anyways, when I was on the board of the Autism Society of America, I was in the middle of a 4-year term when all of a sudden the board voted to require a $20,000 give or get requirement. Well, I was certainly not in any position to donate $20,000. I almost fell off my chair. So I thought I would have to quit. But then I also thought that the agency needed money, and it was a good cause. So I decided, okay, I would try to see if I could get $20,000 worth of donations. And I actually was able to do that, thanks to a few donations from friends who had kids with autism. And I also got a large donation from a company that makes lava lamps, if any of you know what those are. They were very, very popular in the 60s. So the point is, try to find out the requirements for donations and fundraising or any other requirements in advance before you get on to the board of directors. And in my case, hope that they don't change the rules midstream. So the group, it's also important to find out how the group's work fits into a larger organization if there is one. So perhaps the group isn't part of an organization at all, and maybe it functions outside and evaluates or advises. So maybe the group wouldn't look like the pie chart that you see on the screen, but it might look like a satellite separate from the larger organization. So it might be, like circling around and just be external to the group. Sometimes we think we're going to join I would say besides understanding how the group works fits into the work of the larger organization, it's also important to understand the process and the timeline that for considering and implementing the recommendations that are given by the group. So sometimes we think we're joining a group to make big changes quickly, or we join a group that just has advisory function and it isn't actually able to make the decisions and put them into action, but just make recommendations. So by understanding, what we're getting into, it manages our expectations and, our understanding of the timeline so that we can understand that things don't often happen right away. We can be patient and not give up or leave the group. So this is a resource that's in one of your handouts, and it's in your section 7 handout on page 63. And what information do I need to know about the group? When you're considering joining a group or you're new to a group, this tool is really, it's simple for you to use to help organize the information about the group. If somebody that's new to a group, it can also be used to build an understanding about your purpose on the group, the structure of the group, and the processes that the group uses. If you're, somebody that's experienced, you've already been on a group for a while, like 100% of you said you were already on a group right now, it could be used to assess your own understanding of the group. It could be used as a resource for mentors and for new members, or you could use it as an instrument to determine what information might be missing about the group. I'm going to do another poll for you. This one is, let's see, where is it? Okay, here. I'm going to share this one out. And this one really is just to, where could you go to find information about the group to complete this resource, the group that you're on right now or a group that you're thinking about. So you can just check which ones you think would work. Okay. Almost all of you have answered. All right, I'm going to close this out and share it out with you. So it looks like everybody has used some of those options. If you have any other ones that you found useful, you could also type it into the chat box or the question box, either one, whichever is easiest for you to do. Okay. So in order to learn your role as a family representative on a group, I'm going to change this slide. You're going to have to understand what your role and responsibility will be. So when other families can't be physically in the meeting or they weren't invited to the meeting, they rely on family representatives to bring their interests and concerns to the discussion. And again, remember, I'm talking about family representatives, but if if you have a different professional role on a board, it could apply to you as well. The energy that you spend learning new skills and preparing for and attending meetings really will be worth it, especially when you begin to see results from your efforts. There's a few things to do as you start a role on a decision-making group. Connect with a parent who served as the family representative before you, just to try to get an honest picture of what your role will be or has been, in the past. You could ask for a mentor in the group who can be a guide as you get started. Some groups, like I know when Facets adds new board members, they always do an orientation meeting of those members. So, it just depends. But a mentor is really a great way to have somebody in a group to connect with. Always try to come to the meeting prepared. If the group is going to be reviewing like a draft document at the meeting, be sure to read it before the meeting. Make your notes on there to see if anything should be changes. You might do some research online to see, if anything else should be added, but definitely come to the meeting prepared. Find out if the group has bylaws or procedures that guide the way that they operate. So, and if they do, ask for a copy of the most recent version and review them before you start with the group. Those of you who are, and all of you are on a group right now, make sure that you have those in hand. If you haven't seen it, ask for it. Find out about attendance support. Support can really mean a lot of different things that you might need in order to participate. You can ask, what is the process for requesting reimbursement or a stipend? Especially if child care is needed for a family representative or other representatives in order for you to participate. If you have out-of-pocket expenses, and if you have travel or overnight stays are required, find out how that works and how you get reimbursed. An example, I've served on a bunch of advisory committees over the years, a lot of them for the Department of Public Instruction here in Wisconsin. At the end of most of these meetings, people could fill out a form asking for reimbursement for their mileage and for their per diem expenses. Per diem just means a daily rate for things like food and other, minor expenses. The reimbursement check often came a week or so after the meeting. And for other meetings I attended, some people needed the reimbursement for mileage and childcare right away, so they asked for that like before the meeting, and then a lot of times they were given a gift card right there on the spot for gas and a check for their estimated child care expenses. So just ask and inquire before the meeting if there's some sort of reimbursement type of thing. You have a handout that's called Family Leadership Checklist Activity. And as the parent takes on the role of a family representative, or when you're representing others, like maybe you're an educator representing other educators, this is a great checklist to use. 3 areas specifically to look at are what the role is, do you understand the personal costs, and evaluate your expertise. Consider completing this checklist with a view to the decision-making groups that you're on or considering joining. And the answers to this checklist might reveal that this is totally not the right time to take on more responsibility. But if only a few of the things are not checked, you might know what skills you need to polish or things that you have to clarify. The opportunity for leadership and to use your own individual gifts and strengths is really important and will provide the chance for you to make a difference in other people's lives. When you join a group, you might only have a few minutes or less to introduce yourself, and you might want to make sure that you plan your introduction really carefully and so that you can be succinct. You want to include a little about yourself, why you're there, what you will bring to the group, and it only takes a few seconds to make a first impression, and you want to really make sure that it's a good one. So this handout is in your section 7. It has a nice template to help you record and kind of organize important points about your own family story. You can see that there's only a paragraph of space to share your whole story, and that's important because it's important to keep your introduction short, like a minute and a half to 2 minutes or so, because when you introduce yourself, that's often all the time you're going to have. And in your introduction, you want to focus on the answers to these 3 questions. So, who are you? And that's really relevant to the group. So if you're joining the group as a parent of a child with special needs, you don't want to use your whole time, say, to talk about your professional job or something, or where you're from, or your hobbies. You want to focus on your role as a parent and perhaps share the age and disability of your child. And then the second one is what brings you to the group. And if you're joining to be a family representative, to share the voices of other families in situations similar to yours, it's important to share that. And then what will you bring to the group? And this is where personal and professional experience could be shared. So if you're an accountant coming onto a board, you might suggest that you could help review financial policies or serve on an audit committee, or maybe as a board treasurer at some point. If you're an attorney, you might suggest that you're interested in serving on the governance committee. If you love to plan parties and events, you could say that you're interested in serving on the board's fundraising committee. Okay, so really the best way to represent others, let me see. So I want to say, before I go, I'm going to go back just one slide. So, kind of we all bring unique gifts and talents to the groups that we join, and so this is where finding out about the group ahead of time will help you, because you're an expert on yourself and your interests. So being able to share some of the opportunities that you found out about the group is going to help see if you're a good match for the group. And when I went on to the board of directors of the Autism Society of America in 1991, here was my family story. I said, "Hi, I'm Jan Sarek. I'm the parent of 2 sons. My older son, Ben, is 14 and has autism. I'm the president of the Autism Society of Wisconsin currently, so I'm here hopefully to represent the voice of many other parents of children and youth with autism and other members in Wisconsin. Also, I'm the executive director of Wisconsin's Parent Training and Information Center, Wisconsin Facets, which is a nonprofit organization that supports parents of children with disabilities related to special education. I not only bring my knowledge about managing a nonprofit, but also my knowledge related to special education, civil rights, and legislative advocacy. I'm honored to be here." So that's what I said. I think that's, something that you could see it's succinct. I was able to say it in just a couple minutes. So at this point, you might be thinking, how am I supposed to represent other people? I don't always know what's best for my own family on these decision-making groups, much less represent the voices of other families in my community. So family representatives on groups serve as liaisons to other families by providing them with information they need to know. So this information, will help families participate and contribute in meaningful ways. Family representatives on groups also help connect and share input and questions from families, to the organizations and people who need this information. So as a family representative, remember that it's your job to represent the voice of many families, not just your own. It's your role to seek out and support the involvement of families who are interested and potentially will be affected by the group's decision. So there's some ways that you can get better at finding out other people's interests and sharing them with the group that you're on. So number one, welcome input. Go where the families are, be accessible, like you could attend parent group meetings, community or school meetings and events. You could have a separate business card, maybe with your contact information and role as a family representative that's available. You might set up a separate email for this purpose. You could monitor Facebook and, to see what families are saying. Welcome input. If there's families that you haven't been receiving any input from and want to represent better, you actually might need to reach out to them more directly. So some ideas to do this are, you could create a brief survey. You could definitely be mindful of confidentiality, though. You could plan a focus group meeting for anybody that's interested in a specific topic, but provide that information in advance so people can prepare their thoughts. You could offer to visit with families, in their home or a neighborhood location to get their input. And then 3, provide input back to the families so that they can see the impact that they made by you could provide summary reports about group decisions. You could post that information in places like libraries or grocery stores or on social media. A great example, I think, of another way to provide feedback that I experienced was when I was on the Wisconsin Governor's Task Force to develop a state plan for education. And there was a representative on there, Lisa Pugh, who was the state director of the Wisconsin ARC at the time. And she was on the committee representing parents and students with disabilities and other members of ARC. And after each meeting, this was really cool. She made a short video explaining the progress that the committee was making, and she sent that out widely to ARC members and lots of other people, so that families of students with disabilities and anybody else that was interested could be kept up to date and could also contact her with any ideas that they might have. It was a really awesome, way to do that. And when you're representing families, it's important to first identify your own social circle. So, for example, you might know people from your son's wrestling team or your daughter's soccer team or your church or your exercise class, your child's Special Olympics parent group. I mean, think of all the different people that you know from all the different things that you do, and think of all the people that the friends and family in your social circle are also connected with. And so after you try to map those out, think about your entire community and the social circles found there. The question then becomes, how can you reach out to those families that are in your community but maybe outside of your social circle? And that involves some work and some building of connections and the building of trust. But it's important to make that leap so that you can reach families that are out there, so that their voice can be heard and included in the family voices that you bring back to the meeting. I want to share with you a great resource called Leading by Convening, a blueprint for authentic engagements. And I will say that the Serving on Groups guidebook that we've been talking about, and then Leading by Convening, they're considered kind of both sides of the coin. Leading by Convening is a resource for reaching out to parents and others at the front end to find and to invite anybody to a decision-making group that's important to the conversation and the work of the group. So Leading by Convening is kind of important to get the right people on the group to begin with. And then Serving on Groups is a resource for supporting people once they are on a group or thinking about joining the group so that they can be more effective members. It's not necessary really to use both resources when you're on a group, but it's highly recommended to use them both in order to get the best and most efficient outcomes when you're making decisions in a group setting. We think Leading by Convening is such an important resource and a great companion piece to Serving on Groups that the two resources share the same website, Wisconsin Facet's website. To let you know that Leading by Convening was developed by what's called the IDEA Partnership, which was a U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Ed Programs funded entity for many years. I don't think they're around anymore, but that's who developed Leading by Convening to begin with. Over 100 stakeholders nationwide worked together to develop a blueprint for authentic engagement, and Wisconsin Facets had representation in those 100 stakeholders, so we were able to participate in putting it together. The website link that you can see at the bottom of your screen it has a ton of resources, and it has a PDF copy of Leading by Convening, which is a really great resource for you if you're convening a group. And I'm not going to go more in depth today about that, but just know that the National Center for Systemic Improvement took the Leading by Convening publication and developed 5 self-study modules to help states increase stakeholder participation and build active engagement in decision-making groups. The website has all 5 of these modules along with a bunch of just cool, nifty tools. And I strongly urge you to take the time to go through these 5 modules. They're about 30 to 45 minutes a piece with each one of them has a bunch of tools to use. I mean, you really got to go on there and see how cool this is. This slide just shows 2 of the tools that are available in Leading by Convening to help people think through how best to organize a group. That 4 simple questions is a worksheet that, as you're convening your group, you have to go through who cares about this issue and why, what work is already being done by others, and what shared work could unite us. So, maybe sharing activities you can start and just use some of the work that somebody else has done. How can we deepen our connection? So how can you connect and support with others already working on the issue? And then the other one, Engaging Everybody, is another worksheet that's available in Leading by Convening, and it's important to engage the full range of stakeholders. So for some issues, you want everybody. For others, you want some people to be involved at different levels. So just both of these are just really good resources. Here's some Section 7 resources that you could go to. The first one is the Leading by Convening one, of course, that I just mentioned. Also, the third one down, that Advocacy and Action Guide. This is one that parents of children with disabilities are important members of the State Superintendent Special Education Advisory Council. And this is a really good resource for somebody thinking of serving on this group. And it's actually put together by the National Parent Center that's funded by OSEP. And so it's really something that's usable because every state requires a special ed advisory council. So this is a really cool resource. Oh, here's some more. And I love the one, that National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement. That's a really good one. So these are all great resources. So let's go on to Section 8, Skills for Serving on Groups. And one of your handouts is Section 8. So just, again, remember that the most effective teamwork on a group starts if you're well prepared. So we're going to talk about the skills that are necessary for serving on groups. Some of this is repetition from previous sections, so it kind of comes together, in this last one. So these include skills that will help you when you're preparing for a meeting, participating in a meeting, and the follow-up after the meeting. We're also going to discuss a little bit about dealing with conflict and then about how to facilitate a meeting. So I'm going to take a look at each one of these areas and give you a couple tips and strategies about these. So the first skill that's important is learning to prepare for a meeting. And so some tips for doing this: keep a calendar, whether it's in your phone or an actual hard copy calendar, where you record the meeting dates and the times and any small groups or committee meetings in between that might be scheduled between the meetings of the whole group. You could include due dates for review of the material. So if you're, if you have 2 weeks from now is the meeting of the whole, 2 weeks before that, put down, review the meeting materials or something, so that, you've also scheduled time to prepare. Read the agenda for the meeting that's coming up, and every single item actually that's sent for the meeting. Always try to get the agenda ahead of time so you can prepare for the meeting. And even if there's no written agenda, be sure to ask the group leader, to list the major topics. What are the major things that are going to be covered in that meeting? Review past minutes. So read the meeting minutes through to make sure that they're accurate, so that all of the, whoever was taking minutes actually accurately reported all of the important information. And I think I've said this in the past, but sometimes if you definitely take your own notes if you're in a meeting. Don't just sit there, and not take notes. Be sure you take notes, because when you compare it back to the meeting that somebody else took, you might find discrepancies. And usually in many groups, you have a chance to add or change something in the minutes, draft minutes, before the minutes are approved at the meeting. So, be sure that you're taking your own minutes. Organize your thoughts before the meeting. Think about them, write them down, write down your comments ahead of time so that you're going to be prepared to discuss agenda items and the additional materials. Remember, you are an equal member of the group. That's why you were invited. So it's important for you to offer your thoughts and also the ideas and perspectives of all of those that you represent. So, getting that agenda ahead of time and taking the time, a couple weeks before the meeting to, check in with the groups that you're representing, as many people as you can, to see, does anybody have any input into what I'm going to do at this meeting? Just keep learning by researching items that are listed in the agenda and in the additional materials that are sent before the meeting, especially if it's something you aren't familiar with. So, say if it's, certain issues or the budget or policy, you want to really get an in-depth understanding about those things before the meeting and be able to ask questions about it. If you're going to look at the budget at the meeting and you have no idea, really what the budget is supposed to do or anything else, ask somebody that's on the committee or ask the leader of the committee to explain it to you. I mean, you don't want to go to that meeting not knowing what it means. So participating in and I would also, I'm going to go back to this just for a sec. A few good ways to find out more information. I mean, go online and research the group's topic, or maybe things about how to prepare budgets or read financial reports. Watch a YouTube video about budgets. Just get that information so that you know what you're doing. Visit your library, find some books on maybe budgeting or financial reports. Practice good listening skills and communication skills when you're getting ready for a meeting. Talk to other people in your group and your stakeholders. You could ask people how they prepare and where they find information about, topics and issues that are related to the meeting. Social media is a good place to look for. You can follow other groups that are similar to yours and doing related things, like local, state, or national groups that are dealing with similar issues. Like if it's a disability issue, look up what some of these disability groups are saying. That way you can stay up to date on any new developments in the field, and you can make sure that you're in the loop about what's current with your group's particular issues. So now that you've done a lot of work, to prepare for a meeting, step 2 is to participate in the meeting. And participating in a meeting can be difficult if you're not used to being part of a group. And sometimes it's difficult even if you're used to being in groups, depending on the group. So when we're members of a group, it's important to participate and attend all the meetings. Find out if the meetings, like when you're thinking about getting on a group, find out if all the meetings are going to be in person or if there's going to be alternative methods for participating, like, Zoom or Skype or conference calls or GoToMeeting or some kind of other online or virtual kind of, way to participate. Attending meetings helps build relationships between other group members. It helps build your own understanding of what the group's about and what the group's trying to do. It shows a commitment to the group. It's hard to stay up to date on the group and what they're doing and being part of the decision-making process if you're not there all the time. So if you can't attend, be sure to let the leader know ahead of time and make sure you get the notes or the meeting minutes as soon as possible and review them. If you can't participate in live, ask if the meeting can be recorded. Or after the meeting, try to talk to somebody who was there so you can actually really get a scoop, the scoop of what actually took place in the meeting. When you do attend the meeting, as I said, make sure you take your own notes. If you take your own notes, and I sound like a broken record about taking your own notes, but it's really important. And this is because, the minutes often have minimal detail about the discussion and information that went into a final decision. And by taking your own notes, you'll be able to keep information in a way that's meaningful to you. If you look back for something that was discussed or decided, you'll be able to find it easily because you got your own notes, and it'll help you check that the meeting minutes are accurate and make sure that all the important things that were discussed are included. So follow up after the meeting. When the meeting's over, it doesn't mean that the work is done. After the meeting, there's typically materials to read and activities between meetings. Some groups have subgroups that meet, to carry out a specific task for that subgroup. A great habit to get into is to do a follow-up after the meeting. You can do this by referring to your notes. So either before or after the meeting, make a list of things that have to be followed up and questions for you to ask that came up, through the discussion. This will really help you keep track of important information to refer to after the meeting. Make sure you stay organized. Use a binder to store all the material so it's easier to find during the meeting, and then after the meeting you can make, separate labels for, I'm a big one on paper, so it's easier for me to see, dividers with, like put the contacts in one, who's, all the board names and people, like bylaws, put the ground rules in there of all the agendas that have been happening for that group, meeting notes, reports, projects, reference materials, anything. Or you can use technology. I'm actually starting to do that more and more. So you can have an electronic file that, like, if you have a folder on your laptop for that group, then you can divide it by, the dates of the meetings, and all the electronic files that were sent to you ahead of the meeting, you can store them in your folder, either the laptop or tablet, or you can, have it in your phone. You can, if you use the notes area of your phone, you could type notes during the meeting and add them to that meeting folder so it's easier to find them later. So after the meeting, it's important to check back on the group's written guidance, like the group's bylaws and procedures, to make sure everything was being followed correctly. Think about what you learned and what was discussed in the meeting. Sometimes it's important to connect with a mentor or another member of the group to just debrief the meeting and to ask questions. Review the data that you got during the meeting. Really take the time to look at it and to understand what it means and what the group, in relation to what the group's trying to do. Keep learning by researching the topics in other areas or states or organization. Great ideas might come from the work of others. I'm going to do a quick poll here. So let's see, not that one. Let's see. All right. So in the meetings that you've been in, which of these strategies have you used to follow up your meeting after the meeting? And if there's any other strategies that you've used, you could share them in the chat box or the question box. Stick them in there. Okay, just waiting for a couple of you yet. All right, I'm going to close this and share it out with you. And it looks like nobody used the review written guidance like the bylaws, although just keep in mind that that's a good thing to do if you've been on a group that has bylaws or written procedures, just to make sure everything's, up to snuff. All right. Good. Okay. I'll use some of them, so that's cool. And I would say, like, related to the bylaws, because nobody checked that, and I will say that, I've been on boards where, nobody was really looking at the bylaws. And after one of the meetings, because I thought, gee, this group seems to be, not everybody is represented here. And I went to the bylaws and realized that the bylaws required the board to have 13 members, and there were only 8 at the meeting. And so I checked the list of board members, and they only had 8 board members. And truly, when you are on a board, you're responsible to make sure that things are going correctly, because there are state laws that, like, if you're on a nonprofit especially, there's state laws that require you to follow your bylaws. So if you are supposed to have 13 members and you only have 8, you better mention, what about the other 5 board members? Where are they? Either maybe they're not showing up, or the positions aren't filled. And also, I would say that most nonprofits, you have insurance. It's best practice to have insurance that covers your board. And if your board doesn't have the full complement, like, of the 13 people, there's a big chance that if something happens, your insurance won't cover it. So it's always good to really review written guidance that pertains to your group. Okay, I'm going to run through real quick dealing with conflict. Not all meetings, as we know, go smoothly. Sometimes you have to deal with conflict in a meeting. And I think conflict is just a natural part of group dynamics, but it can be pretty complex and hard to deal with. And it's important to try to respect people's individual differences, but it's also important to avoid becoming too entrenched in a fixed position. So we usually can't control other people's behaviors, but we can control our own. Keep an open mind. You might learn something or increase your understanding of another person's point of view. I served on some boards or some advisory councils that had, keep in mind here, I'm representing the perspective of parents of kids with disabilities, and I'm on a board that has, a bunch of professionals and a bunch of educators, and, perhaps they are all saying something that I don't necessarily agree with, but keeping an open mind, listening to why they're saying what they're saying, and then trying to incorporate that into the decisions that I make is really important. I mean, you have to listen to what other people are saying. I mean, that may really increase how you understand why or why not they're objecting to something, or why or why not they want to add something. Use what's called I statements, not you statements. So instead of saying you bring up the same dumb idea every time, you could say, I feel like we've discussed this option in the past, and I would like to hear some new ideas or options that people have. Definitely don't take things personally. If you feel like the group should vote one way on an issue and other people think that the group should vote a different way, it doesn't mean that they think you're stupid or a bad person or anything negative about you. It's just you have a different opinion. You want to try to see the person and not the position that they're taking. Ask questions. Stay focused on the facts. I mean, if somebody takes a position that you don't agree with, ask questions and find out the facts. Ask who, what, when, where, why, how much. Asking those kinds of questions oftentimes really fleshes out the answers, that you need to know. Stay focused on the topic. Refer back to the agenda as a reminder. That's why it's so important to have a meeting agenda that describes what the group's going to talk about in the meeting. That way, if if people are getting off topic and into the weeds, you could say, we're on item number 4 right now. This conversation is unrelated, and I'd like us to turn back and focus on that topic. So you could do that. Focus on solutions. So if you provide an issue or concern, try to offer a solution or potential options for solutions. If your group is planning an event, like say on a Saturday morning, for example, don't just say, I think we should have it on Saturday afternoon. Instead say, because, and then give your reason and back up for why you think it would be better at a different time. So if the conflict is really escalating, make sure to take a break. If you feel overwhelmed, just excuse yourself for a few minutes or suggest that the whole group take a break. Sometimes just stepping away from the situation a few minutes gives everybody an opportunity to calm down and return their focus back to getting a good outcome. Just remember the group's purpose, its mission and vision statement. Keep that at the center of conversation. That's why it's a good idea to have the mission and the vision maybe sometimes at the top of your agenda page so that you can refer back to it. Okay, so some tips for resolving conflict are on this slide. Pay attention to the interests that are presented. By listening carefully, you're most likely going to understand what interest lies, what the person is saying about his position or her position. Maybe the person is against voting to spend more money on one program because they think money will be taken away from a program that's more important to them. Really listen first and talk second. To solve a problem effectively, you have to understand where the other person is coming from before you defend your own position. Make sure that maintaining good relationships are your first priority. As far as possible, make sure that you treat the other people on the group calmly and that you try to build mutual respect. Do your best to be courteous to one another and to remain constructive, even under pressure. Keep people and problems separate. Recognize that oftentimes the other person isn't just being difficult. Real and valid differences can lie behind, conflicting positions. By separating the people from the problem from the person, real issues can be debated without damaging working relationships. Also set out the facts. Agree and establish the objective, observable elements that have an impact on the decision. If we know it's a fact, for example, that there's 100 kids that are hungry every day in our school district, then that number, 100, is a fact. And that will be central to the group's discussion if you're talking about the meal program or other issues. So I just want to point out that there's an activity on conflict management styles. You have a handout for that, and this is a really cool one to do on your own at home. This activity helps you become aware of what your own conflict management style is. If you do this with all the members in a group that you're on, it'll also help you help everybody know the conflict management styles of others in the group. And this really helps better communicate this with each other. I mean, I've done this handout on conflict management styles in groups before, and it's amazing to find out, how people do conflict, and kind of once you know their conflict style, then there's tips for how to manage that style and how to deal with it. I mean, we each have our own way of dealing with conflict. The techniques we use are based on a lot of variables in our own, kind of underlying temperament, our personality, our environment, where we are in our professional career. But, by and large, there's 5 major styles of conflict management techniques that are in all of our toolboxes. In order to address conflict, the 5 are collaborating, competing, avoiding, harmonizing, or compromising. Those are the 5 different styles of management that are generally recognized. And none of these strategies is superior just by, in and of itself. How effective they are depends on the context where they're used. So in this activity, just answer each statement for dealing with conflict on a scale of 1 to 1 being rarely and 4 being always, as to how likely you are to use these different strategies for dealing with conflict. So I think that's, really important. So the next skill that's important to learn as you grow in your group is to serve as the role of the facilitator for your group. You might have been in the group for a year or two, and maybe now it's time for you to volunteer to be the facilitator. So, it's really cool when family members through this serving on groups training feel comfortable facilitating a meeting. I mean, I always think it's really awesome when say, for instance, the Wisconsin State Superintendent's Council has a parent representative as either the leader of the group or the co-leader. That's really awesome. Sometimes an effective meeting, an effective meeting starts with a good facilitator. So to facilitate a meeting, these are some common strategies that good facilitators have. They try to make everybody feel comfortable and valued by, just allowing a small amount of time for small talk, maybe at the beginning of the meeting or in the middle of a meeting, taking a break, thanking people for their participation, using open body language like uncrossed arms or leaning forward. Good facilitators encourage participation by all members. They use open-ended questions. They divide into small groups so they can get feedback from the group. They might use flip charts and handouts to make sure everybody's ideas are heard and shared with the whole group and considered. A good facilitator prevents or manages conflict by using team building activities, setting ground rules or referring back to the ground rules, drawing attention to things that everybody agrees on instead of focusing on the disagreement. So the facilitator might say, okay, that's good. I'm hearing that we all agree on X, Y, and Z. And how do we focus on those areas of agreement to grow them? Number 4 is they actively listen and observe the others in the group by looking at their reaction. I mean, looking at verbal comments or body language as the issues come up. They clarify group discussions by summarizing and rephrasing what was said. So they might use the phrase, I hear that, and then say something like, the fundraising committee thinks that we should do X, Y, and Z. By rephrasing like that, they're offering the opportunity for clarification by the whole group. And then 6 is they also support quality decisions being made by reminding the group of the decision deadlines, reviewing criteria and supporting information, polling the group before major decisions are made to avoid surprises. They may explore options together to, and be open to the idea that like a third position might exist, or a 4th, 5th, or 6th, and the group hasn't found it yet. By working together, but there you might be able to get to the idea jointly. And oftentimes the group just hasn't thought of possible solutions yet. Managed in the wrong way, um, differences between people can quickly spiral out of control, resulting in situations where cooperation breaks down and the group's mission is threatened. Um, Number 7 is to make sure that the meetings stay on track and that the group is getting done what it needs to be done by keeping the group members focused, recording decisions, and developing an action plan. And then finally, they recognize and express appreciation for member contribution to the work of the group and participation during meetings and activities. And they really want to take time to recognize group members. A good leader takes the time to say thank you and congratulations for your work today. We're going to do a very quick listening awareness inventory. As we just learned, one of the great skills of a group facilitator, a good group facilitator, is listening. And so listening is one of the most important keys to communication and understanding others. So here's a short listening awareness inventory. So you're going to rate yourself on these 1 to 4. So you're just going to write that down on a scrap of paper by you. So 4 would be almost always, 3 is usually, 2 is seldom, and 1 is never. So rate yourself on each one of these, and then we're going to add them up at the end. So number 1, do you let people finish what they're trying to say before you speak? Okay, rate yourself on that one. Okay, number 2 is if the person hesitates, do you try to encourage him or her rather than start your reply? So rate that 1 to 4 to 1. Number 3, do you withhold judgment about a person's idea until he or she has finished giving the idea and talking? Number 4 is, can you listen fully even though you think you know what the person is about to say? Okay, 5, can you listen non-judgmentally even if you don't like the person who's talking? Okay. All right, so number 6 is, do you stop what you're doing and give full attention when you're listening? Okay, and number 7 is, do you give the person appropriate head nods and other nonverbals to indicate that you're listening? All right, and number 8 is, do you listen fully regardless of the speaker's manner of speaking, like their grammar or their accent or choice of words? Again, you're rating it 1 to 4. Number 9, do you question the person to clarify his or her ideas more fully? And then number 10, do you restate or paraphrase what is said? Okay, and ask if you got it right. All right, and then I'm going to do this quick poll and add those all up. So 1 to 10, 40 would be the highest. So just if you want to quick, let me know what your score was. 36 to 40 would be outstanding. Okay, let's put it. All right. All right, I think all of you voted. So outstanding would have been if you were truly attentive and trying to listen and have the reputation of being a good listener. Many of you put very good, which would be with some effort you could move into the upper range. Probably you need to put more effort into attention and judgmental evaluation. The needs work, that's kind of where most of you guys fell. Boy, you were honest. So, identify your lowest ratings that you rated yourself and ask why you see yourself that way. And does this interfere with relationships? And what would be the payoff if you could improve? And then the last one, oh, good, nobody voted. That would be not great. So if you're truly oriented with becoming all that you could be, I'm going to close this. Okay. Go back and try this one on for science. Give the assessment to somebody who knows you well, like a parent or a sibling or a friend or your husband or something like that. Ask them to give you feedback on each question in terms of how they observe your listening techniques. I think this is really important. You just rated yourself. Now have somebody else rate you, and read their feedback. Don't be defensive. It might be really a good learning experience for both of you. And this is a cool inventory, and it's a really good one to take with a group too. To have your whole group do it. So here's some Section 8 resources, including how to structure effective meetings and how to lead effective meetings. So many of the groups, a lot of our groups are meeting virtually lately, and so the video on virtual meeting etiquette, etiquette is a good one. I like this. It's just a short, 8-minute video. And then I think I have another slide with resources. Yeah, this one, the second one, working with emotion. This is a great short video that the Wisconsin Special Ed Mediation System produced. I like this one a lot. And then the other two, there's 2 short videos on here, listening skills and paraphrasing. So for those of you that rated yourself down into needs work, I would take a time to check out some of these videos. So before we end today, I want to remind you about the Serving On Groups website, where you can find the online learning platform for all 8 of the Serving On Groups section 24/7. So you can send people there. If people are on your group and they've not had this training, send them to the website. And then also remember I said that leading by convening stuff is on the same website. Remember, all 5 of these webinars in this series that we did this fall were recorded, so you can get the recording links and the handouts from Wisconsin Facets. I've got the phone number on there, and Lori Karcher is the contact for this series. And you can also go to register for more webinars that Wisconsin Facets does. Quick shout out for a plug for this fantastic upcoming 4-part workshop series. This is going to be in place. It'll take place 4 Wednesdays in a row, starting February 8th in 2023. So it's not available just yet, but I've got Sherry Silla's email address on there, and that's how you register for that. But it's going to cover some Serving On Groups, all of the sections, but in way much more detail with a lot of activities and things like that. So it'll be a concrete application of this information. So definitely consider being on that. And again, I just said, your feedback is super important to us. So please complete the evaluation when you get it this afternoon. I also have the survey link on here to the evaluation if you want to go do it right this second, or if you can use a QR code on your phone, you could do it that way too. So just remember, as we close out this series, leaders aren't born. They rise out of your passion for how you want the world to be. I'm going to close up with just 2 more quick surveys. This one is just, do you think this workshop has been relevant to your needs? Okay, I think most of you voted. All right. I'm going to close that out, and then I'm going to do one more. I'll launch this one, and just, do you think that this workshop was of high quality? If you could quickly do that one. Okay, I'm going to close that out. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. Hopefully you have a lovely rest of your day in Wisconsin. It's actually warm and lovely here, so we're going to enjoy getting outside this afternoon. So take care, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this webinar series. Bye.